So yeah, today we are joined with Sandra Harper, and she's an ADI and also a mindfulness trainer and practitioner. And we will be speaking with her about why mindfulness is a bit of a superpower. And the subject of today is going to be focusing on taking in the good and balancing the negativity bias. And you might be thinking, what's that all about? So all will be revealed in the session. This session is very much something which we want you to be involved in at home. So it's very different to our normal webinars. Normally with our webinars, you listen to us, you watch the screen, you see the content on the screen. We're going to have a nice image on the screen, so it's not to distract you from actually taking part in the practice that Sandra's going to lead us through this afternoon. Let's face it, it's been an awfully challenging time. We've all got our stories to tell at the moment. It's very difficult. And so this is hopefully a little slice of positivity for you this afternoon. This is what we're hoping. Some of you will be fully up to speed about mindfulness and what it's all about. Some of you may not be, and you're curious as to what it is. So this is going to be, a useful exploratory exercise, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I'm gonna move on. So Sandra's going to take us through the practice, taking in the good and balancing the negativity bias. We ask you to have a pen and paper at the ready, and also an open mind to take part in this journey of exploration this afternoon. And Sandra is going to start off by introducing herself in a moment and to explain some of the neuroscience behind mindfulness and what this negativity bias is all about. And then lead us to a little bit of a meditation practice. So this is not national standards. This is not standards check. This is not the usual FAQs and roadmaps and all the rest of it. Very different session today. So hopefully you're on the right session, and and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to hand over to Sandra.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Hello and welcome. I'm Sandra Harper of Cotswold Mindfulness and Intuition Driving School, based here in Gloucestershire. So thank you all very much for coming today, and thank you also very much to Olivia and the team at the DIA for holding the webinar for us today. So yes, as Olivia just said, a little bit about me. I've been an ADI for 18 years now. Can't believe it's been that long. And I was looking for ways to support myself with my own anxieties and chronic neck and shoulder pain. And I discovered mindfulness, and it really was a game changer for me, so much so that I actually became a mindfulness teacher. And I'm now delivering mindfulness online to global teams within a large organisation, as well as integrating mindfulness into my driver training with great effect. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about mindfulness. To some people, it all sounds a little bit fluffy. Sometimes we talk to some people and they think they've got this idea of it all being a bit fluffy, but there is actually a science behind mindfulness and why it is indeed a superpower. So I'm sure many of you have heard about the London taxi drivers completing the knowledge. And it's where they have to learn the location of every street within 6 miles of Charing Cross, 20,000 landmarks and locations of museums and theatres and clubs and more. And given how hard it is, it shouldn't be too surprising that the knowledge changes the brains of those who acquire it. And such incredible changes have been shown to occur in the brains of London cabbies, namely the increase in the size of the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and spatial awareness. Now, these brain changes are known as neuroplasticity. And basically, we can change the structure of our brains depending on how we exercise them. So mindfulness meditation also changes the neural pathways in our brains, so that you strengthen the part responsible for rational thought and memory, the hippocampus, and you actually reduce the size of the fear center in the brain, which is the amygdala. And the strengthening of that muscle also allows us more freedom and choice over where we rest our attention, rather than feeling like we're being held a prisoner by our own thought patterns. Excuse me. Now, as humans, our nervous system works to protect our survival. So I'm sure you've all heard of the fight and flight response. And this is really helpful for when our ancestors needed it to motivate them to hunt and react to danger. When the danger's passed, we would return to our villages and we'd enter another mode of being, namely the rest and digest and the tend and befriend modes of being. So we go from the sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, to the parasympathetic nervous system, where we find that peace and the relaxation. The trouble is, when we experience continuous stress in our lives, we either never reach the rest and digest, tend and befriend mode of being, or we simply don't stay there long enough to benefit. And we get caught up in this loop that keeps us on high alert in heightened anxiety and stress. And we can then find our lives feeling completely out of balance. And this can lead to chronic illness and hugely impacts our physical and mental well-being. So before we dive into this session, I'd like to invite you to join me in a grounding practice. And this is something that I invite every single one of my pupils to do as soon as they get into the car. And I can honestly say that they all love it. And they remind me about it if I forget, because my mind's elsewhere, if I've been in a bit of a hurry or whatever. And I find it a really helpful way to start the lesson as well. So just inviting you now to imagine that you've been walking around today carrying two suitcases. One is labelled the past and the other is labelled the future. And we can simply set them both down for the next hour. So just inviting you then to find a comfortable and upright position. Just making sure that you feel comfortable for this practice. It's not very long, just literally 2 minutes. Finding a comfortable and upright position, placing your feet on the floor. And just taking a moment just to drop in to the present moment, leaving all the thoughts and maybe the busyness of the day that's gone before behind us, just for a little while. So we can just be in the here and now before we move on. So just inviting you then just to notice the feet on the floor, maybe the temperature of your toes in your shoes or socks. What's that feeling like for you? Just bringing attention to how that feels. And then we can notice how the chair's making contact with the back of our legs. And when we do this, sometimes we get a sense of gravity holding us in our seat or our chair. We can just bring awareness now to the lower part of the back, just where that's making contact with the seat. And then noticing the upper parts of the back where they make contact, maybe having a sense of opening the front of the body, maybe bringing the shoulders down a little if that feels okay for you. Just inviting you now just to become aware of any tension that you might be holding in the body. Often we hold tension in places that we're not always really aware that there's even any tension there. Let's just become aware of how the jaw's feeling, if there's any tension there, or just noticing where the tongue is at the moment in the mouth. And just noticing whether we're holding any tension in the shoulders. Now let's bring our attention into the hands, noticing where your hands are positioned. They might be clenched tight, or they just might be sitting gently curled. Just noticing how that is for you, and if it feels okay, you might want to bring a sense of softness to any areas of tension. You might notice the breath on the tip of the nose. We might notice the coolness of the breath as it comes in. Just noticing how that feels without trying to make any judgments or labeling anything about it. Just noticing what's here. And then we bring attention to what we can hear inside of the room and maybe outside of the room. Just noticing what's here without any judgment. Just bringing a sense of curiosity maybe. And then as we take a few more breaths, gently feeling the tip of the nostrils, the air as it comes in. You can breathe out, and then whenever you're ready, just inviting you just to gently open the eyes when that feels okay, and then we can begin. Okay, so as Olivia said, because many of us need a bit of a lift at this current time, I'm going to be inviting you to participate in this popular session about taking in the good and balancing the negativity bias. So we can help maintain a balance by deliberately paying more attention to the good things, however small. And many people find the simple practice of noticing the good has great effect. But it's also really helpful to realise that as humans, we have a natural negativity bias. We notice more of the bad things than good, generally speaking, and this is a survival mechanism. So if we were wandering around as cavemen, admiring the sky and the beautiful landscape, we wouldn't have survived for very long. And whilst this works really well for our survival, it doesn't help us to feel more tranquil and happy. And it's hard to feel happy if you're forever looking out for potential danger. The trouble is, our brains have evolved in many ways, but this negativity bias, not so much. Our brains have a hard time telling the difference between real or imagined danger. And that's why it's so easy for us to get caught up in these cycles of negative thought patterns. But it's merely our brain's way of trying to protect us. The good news is that we've worked out that if we can work against this negativity bias by savouring the positive aspects of our life more fully. And we can actually start to change the neural pathways in our brains, much like they do with the cabbage and the knowledge. And this means that we begin to weaken the parts of the brain responsible for our fear response and strengthen the parts that are responsible for our rest and digest and tend and befriend modes of being. So if you have a pen and paper handy, it might be really good to grab that now. I'd just like to invite you to just take part in this short practice. Just inviting you now, just to spend a bit of time looking around you now for things that you find pleasant. And you're going to be using all of your senses. So you're using your sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. It could be simply something as simple as the colour of your wallpaper. It could be a pleasant smell. It could be the feeling of a soft cushion. Or maybe you're using your favourite coffee cup today. And when you find something, see if you can just stay with it for a little while and just relish that pleasure. Now, there might be pleasant thoughts or memories associated with the object. And don't worry if you can't feel it. It takes time, and you could maybe try connecting with a familiar warm feeling, such as a love for a pet or a loved one, and then maybe try linking that feeling to other things that you're grateful for. And we're going to bring a mindful awareness to it. So we're just going to open that up and we're just going to savor that experience and make it last maybe 5 or 10 seconds, just really savoring that. Try not to jump onto anything else, just focus on the sensation and the emotion of that experience. And just let that experience be big and strong, maybe fill in the body. Paying particular attention to the rewarding aspects of the experience, like how fulfilling or cozy it feels. Maybe a sense of safety or warmth, or when hugging a child or pet. Just imagine that experience is sinking deeply into your mind and your body, just like the warm sun on a t-shirt or water soaking into a sponge. Maybe choosing to keep a soft body whilst you absorb that experience. And here you can use the positive experiences to soothe, balance, and even replace negative ones. So when a negative memory or feeling arises, allow your positive experience that you just cultivated in the previous step to arise at the same time. Just see if you can hold these two experiences within yourself at the same time. When two things are held in mind at the same time, they begin to connect with each other. And that's one reason why talking about hard things in a supportive relationship with a friend or a therapist is often so healing. Because painful memories get infused with the comfort, encouragement, and closeness that you experience with the other person. This method was created by psychologist Rick Hanson, and I'd recommend his book Finding Peace in a Frantic World if you're interested to know any more about this. Now, getting the benefits from this method requires practice over some period of time. It's not a quick fix, but more of a long-term strategy for improved well-being. The longer something we can hold in awareness, and the more emotionally stimulating it is, the more neurons that fire and wire together, and the stronger the trace in our memory. So whilst you've been savouring whatever that object is, your amygdala, which controls your fear response, has been busy highlighting its positive emotional meaning for your hippocampus, the centre for memory and emotions, which packages the experience for storage in your long-term memory. Now, if you enrich the experience, this is also going to help you to stimulate those feel-good hormones, such as oxytocin, they're called the cuddle hormone, serotonin, dopamine, and that gives us a more of a sense of relatedness. We deepen that sense of relatedness. Okay, so just coming back now to listening to the rest of this section. So let's say that you were enjoying looking at the sky. So you might think now, where is the pleasure in that experience? Is it just in our eyes? Or do you feel that pleasure, did you feel that pleasure somewhere else, such as in the heart or the stomach? Just noticing if you can sense what might have been going on there. And was there any expression on your face? Similarly, when you enjoy the aroma of coffee or something like that, it's not just what we can smell, it's the way it makes us feel. And we feel it somewhere else in the body as well. So just now, what I'd like to invite you to do is just to write down what the thing was that gave you that pleasure. Actually, write down what that item was. And just try to describe the pleasure that you felt for each thing that you noticed. I don't know if Tom or Olivia would like to write in the chat just to help people remember these points, but so we're writing down the things that gave us pleasure, and then we're going to be writing down where we felt it in the body and which senses were involved. And then just write down how you feel now as you write about your experience. I'm just going to give you just a minute, just to kind of reflect on this a little bit. So things that gave you pleasure, describing the pleasure you felt for each thing. Which senses were involved? And how you feel about it now as you write about it. Okay. So now what I'd like to invite you to do is to either count on the fingers of one hand or write down, if you prefer, 5 things that you feel grateful for, and just see if you can create some space for that. And also be curious about whether you can touch that emotion rather than it just be a thought. This is just for your own, you don't need to write anything in the chat. This is just an exercise for your self-reflection. Just 5 things that you might feel grateful for. It can be something as simple as the fact that it's not raining today here. Something simple even. Okay. So we've written 5 things we feel grateful for. So now sometimes our minds make associations, and some things can evoke a pleasant memory. So you might have already noticed an association to whatever object or experience you were thinking about. So we've noticed that that association, we can think about that and then bring our minds back to the experience in the present moment. So by practicing noticing pleasant associations and returning our minds to the present can be really helpful, because if we practice returning from a pleasant association, we can develop the skill to use it with a painful one. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to invite you to listen to, I'm going to guide you through a meditation. It's only a short one, just 10 minutes or so. Is to promote resilience by using imagery of heart-centered gratitude. Now, this is by Dr. Kathy Kemper at the Ohio State University Center for Integrative Health and Wellness. Gratitude practice can be used to promote a positive mood, hope, and resilience. And as we experience positive emotions such as gratitude, loving kindness and compassion, our awareness broadens and our creativity and problem-solving capacities blossom. We become more effective in whatever we're choosing to do. It's just inviting you now to sit in a comfortable and stable position where you feel fully supported and your back and neck and head are straight. Or lie down on your back in a comfortable place with some support under your knees maybe. Just making sure that you'll be warm enough. You might want to get a sweater or a blanket if the room's cool. And just loosening any restrictive clothing that might prevent you from breathing comfortably. You can either allow your eyes to close or maintain a soft focus, gazing 6 to 12 feet in front of you. Taking a slow, deep breath to bring yourself to the present moment and begin the process of feeling more peaceful and centered. Breathe into the belly so that it expands as you breathe. As you breathe in and as you breathe out. Just take a moment or two to mentally scan the body for any areas where there's tightness or tension or soreness. And breathe your warm, oxygen-filled breath into that area. And as you breathe out, let the tension release, breathing it out. And now notice any worries or fears or anger, irritation, jealousy, or judgment. Just breathing into those emotions and noting them and allowing them to flow out as you breathe out. Another breath into any uncomfortable emotions and breathing out, releasing them. Now, any thoughts of memories, plans, associations, anything other than being here breathing. Just breathe into those thoughts. And as you breathe out, allow the thoughts to flow out with the breath. Now that our bodies, emotions and thoughts are a little clearer, a bit more spacious and open, we can begin to focus on the events, experiences, people, pets or possessions for which we can feel grateful. First, recall that if you're listening to this, you already have several marvelous gifts. The gift of life itself, the most precious gift. Someone gave birth to you. Someone fed you as a baby, changed your nappy, clothed you, bathed you, and taught you to speak and understand. The gift of hearing, so you can hear and learn, whether it's the song of a bird, the notes of a band or orchestra, the songs of singing and voices, the sound of your own breath flowing in and flowing out. The gift of a heartbeat, steady, regular, moment after moment, pumping fresh, life-giving blood to all of your organs. Now think about all the things we have today that make our lives easier and more comfortable than they were for our great-grandparents. We flip a switch and a light appears. We turn a tap and clean, drinkable water flows. We adjust a thermostat and a room grows warmer or cooler. We have a roof to keep us dry when it rains, walls to keep out the cold and wind, and windows to let in the light. We enter a vehicle and it takes us where we want to go. We have access to machines that wash our clothes. We have clothes to wear and places to store them. There are machines that store our food at just the right temperature and help us cook it without us having to gather wood. We have indoor plumbing. We have public libraries that have thousands of books and recordings free for anybody to borrow and read. We have public schools that can teach us to read and write, skills that were available to only the very few just a few hundred years ago. Now take a moment to reflect on all the thousands of people who have worked hard, some without knowing you at all, to make your life easier or more pleasant. Some who plant, grow and harvest your food. Some who transport that food to the market. A team of people who make the roads and railways that make it easier to transport the food. Another team who maintain those vehicles and drivers, loaders and unloaders. Those who take the time to design the shop, the shelves, the packaging that keeps the food safe and allows you to find what you need. The postal service, someone who sorts the mail, others who deliver it. those who maintain the servers that you can get and send emails and access the internet. Those who design operations and systems for gathering, sorting, and disposing of rubbish and recycling. Those who gather news stories and photos, and those who create the many mechanisms by which we can get the news. All of those who play sports, create art, or music, or plays, or poems, or films to entertain and uplift you. And most of these are people you have never met or barely know. Now consider the people and pets you know who enrich your life. Those who smile at you and cheer you on. Those family, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and peers. Those ancestors who worked so that you could live well. Those friends who support you when you need a shoulder or a hand. Now take a moment to reflect on your own reasons for feeling grateful in this moment. There is so much to feel grateful for in this moment. And gratitude fills our hearts and minds, and it lifts our spirit. And when you finish, you can notice the feeling of your body and breathe in this place. Rest quietly for a while, noticing how you feel throughout your body and your emotions and thoughts compared with before you started. No judging, just noticing. Maybe gently stretching your hands and arms and feet and legs. With practice, you can find yourself feeling grateful easily wherever you are. You might choose to keep a journal, noticing 3 or 5 things each day for which you feel particularly grateful. And you can draw on the strength of this gratitude whenever you wish. Thank you for practicing this guided, heart-centered meditation to promote a sense of gratitude. Thank you, everyone. So, just give you a moment before we summarise. So, the definition of mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And by focusing on the breath, the idea is to cultivate attention in what's going on the inside, as well as the outside world, both physically and emotionally. And as well as noticing the negative aspects of life more easily than the positive, we also tend to remember the negative things more easily too. So mindfulness and compassion are like 2 wings of the same bird. Mindfulness allows us to see our experience clearly and allows space to choose. And compassion provides the tools for us to help support ourselves, a bit like fixing our own oxygen mask when the oxygen masks come down on the plane and they say to fix your own oxygen mask first before you help the person next to you. Because if we don't give ourselves what we need, our own resources are depleted and we've then got less to give to others. And this can lead to feelings of stress and overwhelm. As neuroscientist Rick Hanson describes, negative experiences are like Velcro. They stick. Whilst the positive, they're like Teflon. They slide off. And again, coming back to our survival days of our cave-dwelling years, there's a reason that we remember the negative. If something's dangerous, it was more important to learn from that experience rather than from the positive. And so we've looked at the sense of pleasure, but there's also other kinds of pleasure. So value-based pleasure is enjoyment that we derive from a job well done. The warm feeling of helping someone in a difficult situation. The excited feeling of achievement and the contentment of feeling success when you reach a goal. So we've reached the end of the practice. If it's okay, Olivia, I've just got a verse. It's probably one of the best known, if that's okay, by Rumi to share with everybody. Some of you may have heard this before, but it's one of the top, most sort of favourite mindfulness poems. And it's known as the guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And that's the guest house by Rumi. So that is brought us to the end of that practice. So I hope, obviously it seems really strange not being able to see anybody, so but obviously we've got the chat box, and I'll hand you back to Olivia before I say anything else, right? Q&A or...
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's still awake, I'm very much like that.
Yeah, I can feel a bit like that.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, and having a relaxing session. It was quite indulgent, really. Lovely. Yeah, if anyone's got any comments, then just let us know in the chat box. As we said, very, very different session this afternoon, and we meant it. So that hopefully you found some good in that, and you were able to follow that at home. And so do let us know. So many people are saying thank you, so relaxing. I am so relaxed after that. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, that was wonderful. Feel more relaxed, positive, happy, regenerated. So loads of lovely messages coming in. So thank you everyone for that, and thank you, Sandra, because it's not the first time I've been on one of Sandra's courses. Or one of her sessions. I did this in the week with you, didn't I? And you put it on LinkedIn and everything. So that was really good. Loved it then, loved it now. Yeah, so it was so many the chat box is going mad. So many people are putting information up saying how good they thought it was. One question that somebody's asked about how do you open up the conversation about asking learners to do mindfulness at the start of their training?
Yeah, it's really thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess it started off with the more anxious ones, because I'd gone in seek of help. I was anxious and suffering with this chronic pain, and I was thinking, well, I need to find something. I don't want to take stuff, you know, for that to get me through the day and the rest of it. So I thought I need to find a solution, and I discovered Mindfulness Compassion, and it helped me so much. It's a no-brainer. You know, if I've got somebody sat next to me in the car who's really struggling, and we've all been there, you know, people who, the nerves sometimes of these people is such a barrier to learning. You can't teach somebody who's in fight, flight, freeze. If they're in the fear response, if their nervous system has gone into that fear response when they get in the car, you can tell them something all day long, but it affects the way the brain works. And knowing this stuff has actually made me a much more compassionate teacher, because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you'll go over something 100 times, and you know, the next week they've done it and it's been perfect, and then for some reason they come back and they can't do it, and you get to the point you think, why? What is going on here? What's going on with this person? And I now understand, it's when they're in that state of anxiety, when their body and their brain goes into that fight, flight, fear response, they can't function properly. Their memory goes, and they can't operate in the normal way that they would. So the key thing is to get them into that relaxed state before you even start. So it started off with the more nervous pupils, the more anxious pupils, and it was amazing. And they all really responded so well and were so grateful, you know, that I was able to offer this at the beginning of the lesson, and wherever else we needed it, actually, you know, if we needed to pull over and do a grounding practice. And I've got a good relationship with pretty much all of my students, and I talk to them about what I've been doing, and I've talked to them about the mindfulness, and even the ones that were pretty confident actually found it really helpful with things like anger. You know, if you're getting tailgated by somebody and they get really cross, sometimes there was somebody, you know, on their tail. So then we're able to pull over and have another conversation about, well, referring to that other person, and maybe about the fight, flight, fear response, because often people behave in these ways. They project out what they're feeling inside. And again, if you can sort of start to understand a little bit more what's going on in the brain and why all of this stuff is normal human behavior, but there are tools and techniques that we can use to kind of counterbalance that, it just becomes a lot clearer and a lot easier. So it's got to the point now, I mean, it's quite funny, because if I forget, if I've had a really busy, you know, if I'm in a bit of a hurry and I show up and I'm a bit late and I forget the grounding practice, they all say to me, Sandra, are we gonna do that? And I'm like, oh, thank you, you know, thanks for reminding me, we're gonna do the grounding practice. And I've just finished the 8-week MBSR, which is the mindfulness based stress reduction course, and one of my former pupils who passed me was on that course. He enjoyed it so much, I think his mum's going to do the next one. So, you know, and with the Mindfulness in Schools project now, it's becoming far more, I'd say it's going to be more and more normalised, I think, as we go forwards. Mindfulness in Schools project are doing an awful lot of work. More people are hearing about mindfulness. And I do think for a lot of young people now, if they've experienced mindfulness in school, it's going to make total sense for them to have that integrated in other areas of their lives, be it when they're at university or in their driving lessons. So just having some kind of level of understanding about why it can be so helpful can be really key. So sorry, I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No, I think that was a really great answer. Thank you. I think people are really appreciating what you're saying. We've had a few people ask about the book that you recommended. Again.
Yeah, so that's Rick Hanson, Finding Peace in a Frantic World. That's worth a read. And he talks about the neuroscience, which I find really interesting. And it's funny, you know, there tends to be various different schools of thought around mindfulness and meditation. You know, a lot of people have got the preconceived ideas about it all being about beads and sitting cross-legged on the floor chanting Om, but it's you know, it's a lot more than that, you know, and there's a lot of science behind this to support this stuff now. That it's basically brain training. So if any of you've had an injury where you've you know, say you pulled a muscle in your leg or you've injured yourself, you go to see a physiotherapist, and that physiotherapist might say, okay, you need to do these exercises for this amount of time every day for 8 weeks, and you can appreciate you're exercising that mental muscle to improve the strength in that, you know, to rehabilitate that problem. And it's exactly the same with mindful meditation. What you're doing when you do a meditation is you're practicing focused awareness. So your mind drifts off. That's what it's not about, emptying your mind of thoughts. Minds are designed to have thoughts. It's about allowing the thoughts to be there, notice they're there, and then just bring yourself back to the practice, back to the breath. And that happens over and over again. And each time it happens, it's like doing the mental press up, and you strengthen the parts of the brain that you strengthen the hippocampus, which is about the memory and the thought processing part, and then you decrease the fear response, which is the amygdala. So, and then you feel like you've got a bit more choice. If you've ever been one of those people that's got caught, this was my thing, rumination. Rumination and I used to be like that. Very close friends, you know, the pattern in the story, repeat, 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 repeat. And I felt like a prisoner to it. I couldn't get out of this rumination mindset. And what mindfulness has done for me, it's allowed me to have mentally more strength to notice that's happening. And then I choose to redirect my thoughts somewhere else, rather than getting caught and sucked into that vortex of negative thinking, which then, of course, once we get sucked into that over prolonged periods of time, this is when we get caught in anxiety, and then obviously, you know, depression and things like that.
We've had some really the positiveness as the messages are still coming in. Someone has said, how would we start this if we haven't done it before? We might, you know, they could feel a bit silly, or we might feel a bit silly. So there's some questions there. And another one from Paul, he said, works at a driver training ground, and he said it works all the time. So even he said very often experienced drivers will be nervous under pressure, having to perform at high levels, not just a learner driver thing, become overwhelmed. So he said by them relaxing them, and it helps them to focus, helps them to stay calm. It helps them to improve. So it's so you've got some people that are already looking like they're doing this and practicing mindfulness with their trainees. So that's great.
Yeah. It's and even for me today, you know, obviously coming to do this, I grounded myself and I practiced my breathing. My heart rate was really going because I knew I was coming on to present this webinar, and I was able just to get myself by using the breath. And it's your brain doesn't really know that you're trying to trick it. So if you alter your breath to a state of rest and digest, because when you're stressed, your breath becomes really shallow, your heart rate raises, and you're going into that fear response, and your mouth goes dry, and all those other things happen. You get these physical changes. But if you can breathe into the abdomen, you're telling your brain, oh, it's okay now, that danger's gone, we're in rest and digest, tender befriend, we can relax now, everything's fine, we don't need to be worried anymore. And that's what we're telling our nervous system. And then we start to learn to control that sense of anxiety. So it is a superpower.
It's of invisible sort of, you know, toolkit, is in for want of a better phrase, isn't it, that we can use in absolutely any part of our lives whatsoever. To get this into the training our pupils, though, I think that's where people are. There is obviously some interest here. I mean, what we would say, everyone listening, is if you wanted to take this any bit further, just drop us an email, training@driving.org, with any questions or, you know, feedback that you've got. If you want any more of this type of thing, you know, in terms of integrating it with what you do for your work, that, you know, just let us know. And you know, I've been having some chats with Sandra behind the scenes for a while, and so just let us know, and see what we can do there. The other thing, I suppose, Sandra, is if somebody was to start off with this in the car, do they have to have any sort of official mindfulness training to do this? Is there like a little sort of basic starter kit, if you, for want of a better phrase, that you could recommend to people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really keen to bring something. I've got a focus group at the moment in Gloucester, and we're obviously with COVID, we've had to put things off, but we've got a pilot course happening as soon as we're able. So that course is going to be live probably at some time in the summer, which I will be certainly, I want to put all the information, everything I've learned as much as I can into that, to help you guys to actually integrate this stuff into your work and for yourselves, find that helpful. But in the meantime, I think it's good simply just to ask them to pause. As soon as they get in the car, it can just be really helpful. Just say, okay, how's it been today? Should we just take a minute just to, it's been a busy day. Let's just take a minute just to sort of land, shall we? And that you'll probably find they'll go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that'd be good. So just a minute, doesn't have to be very long. And it takes literally 2 minutes. Let's just take a minute to land. And even if you just sit with them with your eyes closed and just breathe and say, oh, okay, right, that feels better, doesn't it? Should we ready to go? And it's just about having a conversation, really,
Yeah. Some will be open to it and others won't be. So if it's not for them, it's not for them. But it's always there having a conversation with them, isn't it? Jonathan's asked, referencing the breathing, is it that it puts more oxygen into the brain and activates more positive receptors? Or, could you explain it a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. It's actually to do, believe it or not, with the oxygen level that gets taken into the blood. And it's to do with the fact that when we hyperventilate, we actually breathe. I think it's something I did. It's one of those things that you read and you find fascinating. I've got to make sure I remember it the right way around. But it's to do with the carbon dioxide and oxygen levels going out of whack. Basically, I think it's even too much carbon dioxide coming out. I can't remember, but I remember I just looked it up because I found it really interesting. But it is basically that. It's to do with the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the blood affecting how that works. And we're all made, it's all chemicals basically. So how we breathe affects the oxygen, the carbon dioxide affects the chemicals, affects the hormones in the blood, in the system. And it's all to do with our nervous system and how we respond. And it can be really helpful as well to know that all of this stuff is totally normal. So when the pupil is being really, you think, wow, we've done this so many times, and they just don't get it. And you might think, well, why is that? It's so helpful to understand. It's what's going on in the biology. What's happening to them inside actually is responsible for a lot of that. And I find that so helpful to know that. And it's also been so helpful to me to recognize in myself what's going on, because I used to be in chronic pain. I don't know whether any of you guys get this, but I'd finish the end of the day and I would be in agony. And in my focus group, I had other people telling me their legs, they get really sore legs from putting their legs to the side. Even things like resting your arm on the door. I had costochondritis from the seatbelt across my chest. All these pains and difficulties just from simply being sat in the car all day. But a lot of it was actually down to me having this muscle tension that would develop throughout the day, and I was just completely oblivious to it. So my shoulders would be tense, my jaw would be tight, and this would happen, but I would be completely unaware of it. So now I'm able to recognize if I'm feeling, because it's like some lessons can be really difficult, the traffic's busy and it's all happening. But now I'm able to kind of notice what's going on for me as well a bit more, and I notice that tension starting to creep in. So I'm able to breathe into the body. And I'll even say to them, if we've had a bit of a struggle or something's been really tricky, for them or for me to kind of manage or whatever, I'll often say, should we just take a moment, just find somewhere safe, convenient to pull over. And I'll say, oh, what was that like? And they might say, well, blimey, that was a bit mad or whatever. And I said, let's just take a moment, shall we just catch the breath. And it's an act of self-compassion, and I'm able to then give to them so much better, because if I'm feeling depleted, if I've had a lesson where I feel like I've literally been through the mangle, somebody's sort of wrung every last bit of juice out of me, every bit of it's been one of those lessons, we've all had them, it's hard when you've got another lesson you've got to go into, you know, however long after, and that could be challenging. But if we're able to sort of give ourselves that space and time just to kind of nourish ourselves and give ourselves what we need, and that just might be as simple as sitting and taking a breath. I do it between lessons actually as well. I'll open the window and just listen to the birds, or, you know, just noticing what I need in that moment, just to help to sustain me so that I can be better, you know, as I go through my day, and not reach that point of complete depletion.
Yeah, I think that's really important for everybody. There's so lots of comments still coming through. So yeah, okay, well, thank you so much. I mean, if there's anyone else who's got any other questions, just pop them in the chat box now, and we'll just get the last couple. But I think that you know, that was a really useful session. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Sandra. And thank you so much for that. We just thought we would do something a little bit different for you guys this afternoon. You know, mental well-being is so important, especially now. Lots of people are feeling so low for many different reasons. We've all got our own stories and things. So, or even if you're not, it's just a nice you know, introduction to mindfulness if you've not experienced this before. A short little meditation to say this, you'll be able to watch this back, so if you wanted to repeat this, then you can do, and just to bring a sense of calm and peace and you know, acceptance. As Sandra said, sometimes it's not about clearing your mind, it's just about recognizing, oh yeah, I'm thinking about that, and you know, and just sort of being more conscious of your thoughts, I suppose, as well. I've, as I say, I've done a course with Sandra myself in the background about mindfulness resilience, and that was really helpful. And so it is very useful. Lots of things are very useful from it. So I do believe in this practice. I think it's a very good way to. Everyone's so busy. It's not just us, our pupils that come from work or college or wherever they've come from, you know, had a busy day. And as you say, Sandra, the example you gave about, you know, we don't quite know what it is that they can't seem to take something in, but you know they know it or should know it, but there's something stopping them. Sometimes it might be something like along these lines. You know, it's something worth trying and having a conversation with pupils when we go back to work. So if you want to know more, or you got a few more questions about this, you can just drop us an email, training@driving.org, and we'll happily answer that for you. So yeah, lots of people really loving that brilliant webinar. Thank you, so interesting. Thank you. Feel so
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate you all being here today, and it's been lovely to share it. And if I can give any information or advice about mindfulness and compassion, and just in touch with Olivia, and I'm happy to answer any questions you think of afterwards, and that's fine.
Email at training@driving.org, we can come back to you on that. So have a good rest of your days, everybody. Hope you wishing everyone a decent weekend, and you know, let's hope the sun will come out. I'm not sure, but let's you know, I'm just sitting here at the moment looking out the window, and it's looking like it's brightening up a bit where I am, so that's a nice thing. Okay, well, many thanks everyone for your time. Hope you feel a little bit more rested, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.